Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Hold on today. And I thank my friend for yielding the time. And I'd ask him begin a little bit unusually by asking a few questions of my friend and then yielding to him for any response that he may have. A gentleman named Bruce Bartlett was the former Treasury Secretary and Department Economist, rather, for President Ronald Reagan. He makes this comment. The serious point here is that the term small business casts a very wide net. Indeed, since the only test for being a small business under the legislation, as my good friend proposed, number of employees, the ultimate beneficiaries of the Republican bill will be some large and profitable businesses that just happen to have few employees. What is my friend's response to that?
Well, first of all, let me say this, and thank you for yielding me the time, and I hope that my substance that I provide back is of great measure to the gentleman's request. First of all, let me say I know Bruce Bartlett. I had a chance to work with Mr. Bartlett when I served as Vice President of the National Center for Policy Analysis. Mr. Bartlett was a regular contributor, not just to the NCPA, but of economic terms. I will completely agree with Mr. Bartlett that there are many out there who have successful businesses. Our point is we want them all to grow. Successful business is able to hire new people. Unsuccessful businesses struggle and cannot provide not only an increase in the amount of pay, but also the benefit issue becomes difficult. So we want people to be successful, and I think Mr. Bartlett is correct. It's a wide swath. I want small business because of the size, not because of how successful they are, to be able to employ more people, and that's what Republicans are trying to do, guilty as charged.
Then I ask my friend first to just listen, and then I will ask yet another question. Mr. Bartlett also said this. He said the Republican tax plan will do nothing whatsoever to increase employment. It is nothing more than an election year giveaway to favored Republican constituencies and should not be taken seriously. But I ask my friend, after hearing what Mr. Bartlett said, is there a requirement, and listening to you as well, saying that it's suggested that there will be jobs, is there a requirement in the legislation as is proposed that requires the creation of jobs?
Well, let me, I thank the gentleman.
Can you give me a yes or no, and then
here's what I can give you. Mr. Bartlett is wrong because I know there will be at least one new job, net new job created. And I know that because the testimony and information that I received last week as I was at the North Dallas Chamber, several people told me this is exactly what they need. They needed the jobs bill to get credit. They need this opportunity. And what's interesting is on the reverse side is where Illinois in January, a full year ago, passed a bill which increased taxes, and they lost 58,000 jobs in Illinois quickly because of high taxes. We're trying to make it easier to grow small business. Mr. Bartlett, it seems like there will be no new job growth. There will be, and he knows better.
Well, let me offer to my friend a complaint, the fact that this matter didn't go through regular order, did not have hearings, did have one question period during the Ways and Means Committee markup, and the person that was being questioned on the Committee on Taxation was the Chief of Staff, Thomas Barthold. And when he was asked about the effects of H.R. 9, the question was put to him by our colleague, Mr. Becerra, is there a requirement that you create jobs? Mr. Barthold says there's no requirement on the result of the tax relief. And I go back to you and ask you again, is there a requirement that jobs be created in the measure as offered?
The answer is no. And I would reply to the gentleman, if I saw in this House of Representatives when former Speaker Pelosi increased the amount of money that we had in our member reimbursement account, we went out and did more. And I hired an additional person at that rate. If given an opportunity, small business wants to grow and they want to add employees, and this is what nobody seems to understand in this town, we are for growing our economy. No one on our side would do something that wouldn't necessarily work. We're doing it because this is what people are asking for to grow the economy.
Well, my friend says that no one would do anything that would not necessarily work. Well, why are we spending the time on this when my friend and I know that this measure is not going to become law for the reason whether the state Senate is not going to pass it? Last week, contrary to what you said, in the United States Senate, the president's plan and the Democrats' plan was offered where there would be an alternative minimum tax for people that pay $1 million or more in taxes. It's been referred to as the Buffett rule. You said that it didn't pass. It had a majority, but it didn't come up because Republicans didn't allow for it to have a majority, whereas had it come up, it likely would have passed because some Republicans would have caused it to pass also. But you don't create jobs with your 20%, and now you need to answer for me then. What if somebody after they get the 20%, rather than hiring somebody, fire somebody? Do they still get the tax cut?
Thank you very much. As the gentleman knows quite well from the legislation and from the hearing which we had in the Rules Committee yesterday, that while these are great questions that you ask, the answer is we do not tell them what to do. There are no limitations in this bill that would say that you must or must not do these things. We don't do that. We try and encourage on the Republican side and believe that this is what small business is asking for. I think you'll be shocked with not only the success if we had testimony from these small businesses, this is what they're asking for.
And so
now,
this measure,
let's go to the worthiness of why would we possibly push an agenda that will never be held the light of day with a vote in the United States Senate? For the same reason that the president will never get a tax increase from John Boehner. This Republican House will not increase taxes, and so I don't know why the president is doing what he's doing.
All of what my friend says is most regrettable. One of the things that I'm sure members in your conference are concerned about is the fact that this is a one-year measure. Am I correct about that?
I believe that would be correct.
Tell me then, how many times have we passed anything 1 year that's a tax something or another that cuts taxes? Let's take the Bush tax cuts that lasted 10 years that are soon to expire. How is it then that you expect that this is not going to go beyond 1 year? 1 year already is going to cost $46 billion. Now, my friend is a deficit and a debt hawk, and I like to think that I'm conservative enough to feel that the deficit and the debt are matters that we should address in order to give Americans opportunity. Toward that end, what is a $46 billion measure going to do other than blow a hole in the deficit since it's not paid for? I'll yield to my friend.
I appreciate that, and thank you so much for asking the question. The gentleman was here in '97. The exact same arguments took place as we worked with...
I ain't talking about then, I'm talking about now.
As we worked with President Clinton, and we were told on this floor a capital gains tax cut will result in $9 million not coming into the Treasury. $554 million appeared quickly in that same tax year.
Yeah, but
I would say to the gentleman, we encourage people to go do things. They will turn things into great opportunities.
Reclaiming my time.
Yes, sir.
We can point back. I'm talking about what you're trying to do today.
Yes,
what
sir.
you're trying to do today is blowing a $46 billion hole in the deficit, which will destroy opportunity. I thank my friend, and let me get on with my script now that I've had my opportunity to talk with you. I rise in strong opposition to this rule and its opportunity destroying under the underlying bill. When it comes to small businesses, Congress should work to create chances for smart, savvy, small business owners to strive so that their hard-working Americans can get a fair shot at a good-paying job for an honest day's work and thereby ensure that our economic recovery continues. Instead, the Republican bill creates only one opportunity, and that is the opportunity for those that are better off, including those of us in the United States Congress, to pay less than we could and can as our fair share in taxes. Make no mistake, H.R. 9, despite its name, is not going to level the playing field so that American businesses can create the kinds of opportunities that the average American needs. That's because how benefits of this bill available to a wide range of enterprises owned by wealthy people, including lawyers. I'm one of the lawyers, not one of the wealthy, but when I was a lawyer and had 3 secretaries as a single practitioner, if you had given me a 20% tax cut, I may have shared some of that with those 3 employees. I assure you I would not have hired anybody. Had you, when I was a lawyer, given me a 20% tax cut and required me to hire somebody, then I would have hired somebody, and it may have done some good. But other wealthy people, lobbyists, hedge funds, private equity fund managers, as well as many professional sports teams, without a single requirement to expand employment or invest in the United States. In fact, under this bill, a business owner could fire, as I asked my friend, U.S. workers, hire full-time workers in foreign countries, and still be eligible for the full deduction. According to an analysis of the Tax Policy Center, approximately 49% of the benefits of H.R. 9 would go to 0.3% of people with incomes exceeding $1 million in 2012, each receiving an average tax cut of more than $44,000. That's not creating an opportunity environment in which small businesses can create jobs. As I've said before and say again, I have no quarrel with millionaires and billionaires and the wealthiest of us in America. And like my friend from Texas, I want everybody to be able to have significant wealth if that were to be possible. I do, however, have a problem with legislation designed to tip the scales in favor of the best among us in this country masquerading as tax cuts for small businesses. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, the Republican justifications for this kind of trickle-down tax policy are inaccurate and debunked by history. In actuality, tax rates have little bearing on economic productivity. Some of the fastest economic growth of the post-war period came in the 50s, when the top tax rate was above 80%. The slowest growth came in the 2000s, when the top tax rate was 35%, which I pay, and which some of you do not because you are in better circumstances than am I, but all of us in the House of Representatives are better off than the people we want to really help, other than those that are better off like us. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the Republican justifications allowed that this occurrence, that the change from the 50s to the 2000s is easy to explain. Businesses do not make decisions based on tax rates. They make decisions based on factors specific to their business, like their number of competitors and larger macro and microeconomic factors. Bills such as the one before us today ignore the reality in favor of pushing Republican pet policies that ignore the actual difficulties facing hardworking small business owners. In the Rules Committee, I cited to Betty's Restaurant in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I eat breakfast and sometimes lunch or dinner. At Betty's, she doesn't have more than 9 employees. If we were to target our relief to 20%, Betty would be in better shape. But if Larry Flint at Hustler is going to be in better shape because he has less than 500 employees, I'm taking Betty. I get my clothes cleaned at Spring Cleaners. They've been in business for over 25 years. The owner of that business, after he retired, left it with his daughter. They don't have more than 10 employees in 2 of their cleaning plants. This kind of measure, if targeted to her, would help her. But a law firm here in Washington or a lobbying firm with 49 lawyers that's making $500 million a year will qualify for this tax cut, and I'm taking spring cleaners over those lawyers and lobbyists here in this town. Simply put, what we have before us is the exact opposite of a jobs bill. It's a boom for the rich, the very antithesis of smart tax reform, and does nothing to create opportunities for middle class, let alone poor Americans. Instead of the misguided legislation before us today, Madam Speaker, initiatives that stimulate economic growth and job creation, such as public-private partnerships. When compared to measures such as infrastructure spending, today's bill would have a relatively small effect on strengthening our economy and helping businesses create even more jobs. In comparison, for every $1 billion invested in infrastructure construction projects, 18,000 jobs, and nobody controverts that, and if you do, say 15,000 jobs are supported nationwide. And my governor turned down $1 billion+ for a rail project that had been appropriated and that Republicans and Democrats had sought, and it would have created 18,000 jobs, and yet we find ourselves in Florida, just like other places in this country, suffering job diminution. This wasn't money that did not go to Illinois and California and the Northeast Corridor for rail. It just did not come to Florida. And there are other circumstances. We yesterday passed a measure here to extend the transportation measure for 3 months. Cut me some slack. Jim Oberstar has been begging us before he left Congress to do a $400 billion infrastructure bill that probably would put us in the position of not having to have done the stimulus had we done it when he asked for it. And we need to do a better bill than a 3-month extension. This was the 10th extension of the transportation measure that we have done. We are better than that, and we could have done what the Senate offered, MAP 21, and we would kickstart this economy rather than kicking this can down the road. Let me tell you something about the can. It's getting ready to run up against a wall or a cliff, and there ain't going to be nowhere else to kick it. Someday, Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, are going to have to stand up and face the fact that we must address this in a significant way, and we can't have this gridlock, and we can't have this continuing standoff. This is supposed to be the land of opportunity, Madam Speaker, and let's make sure that it's the land of opportunity for rich people. Let's make sure that it's the land of opportunity for middle class and poor people. Let's make sure that it's the land of opportunity for small and large businesses. In short, opportunities for all Americans. I reserve the balance of my time.